Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Milligan, and we are proudly presented by SPI Logistics. And in this episode, I got a special one for you today. It is recapping my trip to Chicago to tour the new DHL export facility and also their innovation center. It was my first trip to Chicago when it's not like a forced layover where a flight gets canceled and you have to sleep in the O'Hare airport. That was a story long ago. But for this particular trip, it was my first time to Chicago. Didn't actually get to see any of, the traditional touristy sites. It was strictly business for this trip with a little bit of food mixed in. So in this episode, I thought it would be fun to recap everything I learned. As someone who has spent more than a decade in logistics, there are always these nooks and crannies of the logistics experience or the logistics process that I am still learning about. And it would be weird to call DHL a company that can process 10,000 packages in an hour as a little nook and cranny of the logistics process, but it's not. It's massively scaled. It is massively impressive. And in this video, which is also going to be a podcast episode as well, so I'm going to do my best to explain what I saw while I was at the facility. But then if you're also curious, you can watch the video version of this episode and see some of the little cell phone footage, the B-roll that I recorded while I was touring the facility and taking a bunch of notes. And now I've got them all compiled in a nice little episode for y'all today. So let's talk about the first thing that I learned, and that is this isn't your typical warehouse. Now, to sort of give you the lay of the land, the Innovation Center is based in Chicago, but the warehouse sorting facility is about 30 minutes away. And so for the first part of the day, we met at the Innovation Center. We spent a few hours there, and they have the Innovation Center where it's split off into several different sort of sections of the Innovation Center where they're explaining all of the different initiatives that DHL is taking on. And now the warehouse in particular, where it does like the actual sorting of e-commerce packages. They call it an export facility. And so because it's an export facility, majority of packages are all shipped internally to that facility. And then they go through a series of processes of sorting and before they're made it or before they make it to their final destination. Now, the overwhelming majority of those packages are shipped to their sister hub in Cincinnati, Ohio, where they will then be exported out globally for a lot of those different packages. So it was really, really cool to see from the warehouse perspective. Now, a couple numbers I want to throw at you is this is a 100,000 square foot facility with 96 belt parking positions, a fully electrified EV infrastructure. All of the vehicles inside of the facility were all able to be charged EV. And so they had all of these different DHL vans that were driving in and out and charging up for the night. Now, we got to this warehouse facility around 6 p.m. And so for a lot of those drivers, they're already kind of done for the day. And it's more or less the nighttime crew that is taking over afterwards, not necessarily to continue driving those vans, but to continue some other work that was going on in the facility. And so there was a few different, I want to say there was maybe a dozen employees inside the entire facility. And so if you think about it, that this 100,000 square foot facility is sitting right there and sorting up to 10,000 packages in an hour, to have about a dozen people that's doing that job, that kind of hints at a lot of the innovation that is taking place within DHL to be able to have a facility that can handle that many packages, that's that large, and run with a few amount of people, which is obviously kind of a separate conversation as far as, what the roles within shipping will look like. But for a modern day facility that, with e-commerce trends just exploding in growth over the last handful of years and with no signs of showing down or slowing down, that is a recipe for a facility like this, and the need for a facility like this to be able to continue reaching and meeting that demand, not only now but in the future. So a couple more numbers that I wanted to throw, or little fast facts that I wanted to throw at you for the Innovation Center, specifically or not the Innovation Center, but the warehouse facility, the export warehouse facility. facility. Another note is that they had a hospital area for packages that needed manual intervention. And so, because this is an export facility, a lot of the packages that are coming in, they have to go through the same customs and border scanning equipment that you see largely at airports. And so, because this is going to another airport, a lot of these packages are going to another airport. There's a whole assembly line where air cargo is placed, or air cargo, I guess, components are being used. And so we're going to put some visuals up on the screen in order to help kind of showcase what those visuals or what I'm talking about. But it kind of looks like part of a plane, and it's sitting at the end of, there's several of them. There's about 4 or 5 of them, these little containers, but containers specifically built for a cargo plane. And they have all of these belts that all run throughout the entire warehouse. And as the packages get sorted and as they get scanned and they go through all of the different security measures, then they go into their different sorting facilities, and then they get dropped off right into those little airplane cargo container compartments. It's probably the best way that I can explain it. If you're looking for, I guess, kind of verbal explanation of what these systems look like, it looks like the outside is kind of like the hull of a plane, where it's that kind of a metal, but then it's like a oval shaped container that's then cut in half, and then the packages and all the different packages go inside of the container, and then the container itself goes off on a belt onto another truck, and then that's what's shipped over to the airport facility. That's then it's put into a plane, and then it's flown over to Cincinnati. So hopefully that makes sense, but if not, we'll have some visuals that will be showing up on the screen to explain it a little bit more. So they have a hospital area for some of those packages that need the manual intervention. And then, last but not least, they let us test some of not necessarily test, but they let us walk around and see what some of the robotics look like that are sorting some of these packages as well. And some of them are the same robotics that we saw at the Innovation Center. So it was cool to go to the Innovation Center first and see some of these robots in theory of being able to pick and pack and sort all different kinds of packages, but then to go and see it in real life of when it's happening at a large scale was really, really impressive. At first, I thought I had heard the number of 1,000 packages an hour, and I was impressed by that stat. But then a friend of the show, Nathan Cheney, you might know him of Supply Cheney content creation. He private messaged me and he was like, "Are you sure? That it wasn't a different number, because 1,000 doesn't sound all that impressive." And I was like, "It sounds impressive to me." And like, I thought it was impressive, but then I went back and checked the transcript of the recordings that I was taking, and sure enough, they said 10,000 packages an hour. So shout out to Nathan for helping me out there for that, because I was still impressed at 1,000, but 10,000 is just mind blowing. Okay, the next one I want to talk about, that was one of my major takeaways from this DHL tour, and that is the connection between humans and robots. And most importantly, or most interesting, I think, to me, is how DHL is approaching the building of relationships between the two, I guess, mediums is the right way to say this, because it's no secret that for a lot of employees, and not DHL employees specifically, but just employees in general that work in and around supply chain, they probably heard the debate, between autonomous trucks and truck drivers who don't want to see this technology, kind of take hold. There's a whole argument that could be made. Is this kind of technology actually ever going to take hold? I'm not so sure on that. But where robots and robotics are really taking shape is in e-commerce and in warehousing. More than 90% of warehouses all across the country do not have any kind of robotics. But it's also at the same time, it's very difficult to find warehouse workers, because there's a real concern. Amazon publicly stated this back in, I believe, 2020, maybe 2021, that they thought that they were going to run out of potential warehouse workers, because it's so challenging to find people that can do this kind of job, to meet this level of demand, to be on their feet all day. It's depending on the role within the warehouse, it's also kind of dangerous at times, just depending on the role that you might have. And so they're trying to have robots in place where those jobs are dangerous, where they're really strenuous, and where, frankly, they just don't have the people who want to do the work inside of the warehouse. And so, what do? They take these different robotics and they make them specialize in a specific area, specific field. One of those things was called a robust AI, and that is a lidar guided warehouse assistant that helps with picking tasks. This was the same robot, I believe it was the same robot that we saw inside of the innovation center, but then also we saw it at the warehouse itself doing the picking and packing. And so these are things directly being tried out in the innovation center, and then when the test proves that it does well, it goes for another trial inside of the warehouse as well, inside of the warehouse. And then if that does good, if that performs well, then they will start deploying it to more and more facilities. So Robust AI was one of those pick and pack robots that I thought was really interesting. It also moves really quick and really strong. So you kind of the environment that some of these the robotics are put in are very much contained, and they're also very much doing one role. And so then I think for a lot of us, especially when it comes to robotics, because we also saw the Boston Dynamics, famous Spot dog that is seen at a lot of different logistics conferences, Manifest in particular. I've seen it there a couple different times. But the Boston Dynamics, Spot dog was at the facility at the Innovation Center as well. And so being able to test how the different types of robotics can interact within the warehouse. Now, that particular robot, and they have a partnership with DHL at their innovation center. I did not see one of these robotics at the warehouse facility, where the Boston Dynamics, where they call them Spot in some areas by the Boston Dynamic team. But if you have your own Spot, then you can name it whatever you want. In this case, they were still at the DHL Innovation Center. They were still trying to come up with an official name for their version of the Boston Dynamics Spot. I think they were going to land on Wrigley, but they hadn't confirmed it yet. But it seemed like a couple of the employees, were pretty pumped about being able to, name it after, something local and something within Chicago, have a little, Chicago pride around it. But that dog, I guess, that robotic dog, was inside of the innovation center. And they said most of the use cases for that is mainly just inspecting dangerous materials, inspecting dangerous situations. There isn't really a use case within specifically a logistics e-commerce area that's going to make a whole heck of a lot of sense. But the technology that's being developed with that system can then be applied in other areas. So one of those areas is called the Boston Dynamics Stretch, which helps with unloading trucks with real-time pressure adjustment on different packages. So I thought that was really cool. Then we had another part of the Innovation Center was not just touring and seeing all of the different, sort of robots and things that were going on. They also had a lot of, handheld, Pro Glove, which we've had an interview with one of those representatives on the show previously. It's kind of like an Iron Man glove, where the user, instead of having to take a UPC or a barcode scanner out of their pocket, that those couple seconds that it takes for you to pull that scanner out of your pocket and scan something. Pro Glove instead is the glove that you wear on your hand, and you kind of use it like Iron Man, and you can just scan it on your hand, because they found that when the workers could save, a second and a half of scanning, that amounted to minutes every day. Minutes every day add up to every single week, every single month, year, and so on and so forth. And so that's what the purpose of the Innovation Center is where are these minor tweaks that we can make in the shipping process in order to gain back seconds and minutes, because all of that matters, especially when it comes to e-commerce shipments. And so I thought that was really cool. And then from a a psychological perspective, because after we got done touring the innovation center and before we went to the export facility, we got to sit down with a bunch of the DHL executives and ask them, and they gave a presentation, which we might be able to share at the end of this show. So I'll share that if we're able to, clean up the audio. No promises. So shout out to Josh if he's listening. Hopefully he can make the audio, sound really pretty. But we will play that talk at the end of this conversation. So then that way you can listen to it if you would like. But they really talked about, and one of my questions was, how do you approach the fear element of this robot is going to take my job when you introduce something like robotics to a warehouse worker? Because I was listening to a conversation at for Six River Systems. I believe they were purchased by Amazon some years ago, but in one of their calls they talked about how they had to have a psychological element to their technology onboarding, because when they were introducing robotics to warehouse workers, there was this animosity within the warehouse worker that I'm just training this device to take my job. Whereas now they approach the training to, especially when it comes to DHL, and this is how they answered the question when I was kind of insinuating, like, how do you combat that fear element whenever you introduce robotics? And they say you have to really take the team and be able to build with them and build a program with them. So then that way they see the robotics aspect as a partner, as a helper to their work, not taking their job. And so for the folks that embrace the technology, that embrace the willingness to evolve as work evolves, then you're probably going to be one of those, dozen employees that are working inside of an automated warehouse versus, another type of warehouse where they're not going to have any kind of robotics. You're at risk for more injury. You're at risk for, kind of falling behind. And so if you're willing as a worker to be able to embrace this new style of different optimizations that are going on within the shipment process, then I would think that you would have more longevity as far as a career is concerned, and then you would also be less prone to future risk as far as injury is concerned. And so I thought that was really interesting, that they approach the training and the onboarding of a new robotic system within a warehouse by using it as almost like a collaboration with the internal warehouses or with the internal employees that work within the warehouse. And so I thought that was also really important too, is that you want to involve, whenever you're going to make a drastic, and not drastic, but a huge investment in something like robotics, then that's something that you want to involve your team with, because you obviously want to take care of your team and be able to grow with them. And hopefully they're supporting a lot of the investments that you want to make in order to shore up the business, make it as profitable as possible, because if it's as profitable as possible, then that means job security for you in the future. At least that's the way I think about it. I know other people have, some negative thoughts, especially when it comes around, technology and advancements and automation and AI. I take the positive approach. So I'll let the naysayers have their opinion, but it's my show. I get to have the positive opinion. And so I thought that was super interesting about the human and robots, kind of pairing them up to be the real power couple. Okay, number 3 of the things that I learned during the DHL tour, and that's also, we can't have a robotics episode and a technology positive episode without talking about AI, right? And so this is the AI part of the conversation. And of course, DHL is embracing generative AI as well as many of their customers, because they have a Gen AI hub with 75,000 plus users across 140 countries, making 1.5 million API calls a month. The representative at DHL that was giving this information did a live demo where you can call, as as a warehouse facility operator, you can call and say, how's my supply chain doing today? And the AI bot will scan all of your information, all of your data, and it will give you a full report on how it's doing, good, bad, where are the exceptions, where things falling through the cracks, and so then that way you can focus on more of like what's not working and fix those issues quickly, and then that way you can focus after you fix the issues, and you can focus more on the good stuff. So I thought that that was really interesting, is how many people are using their generative AI products. So that's 75,000 users across 140 plus countries, making 1.5 million API calls per month. They have a product classification tool that processes 35 million customs entries, which, if you're working in customs, if you're working anywhere with cross-border trade right now, you have my ultimate empathy, sympathy, all of the P's that go along with feeling your pain of what you're going through right now. But this is a perfect situation of where AI is actually useful, because if you can quickly classify a lot of these different customs codes and trade policies across the globe, and if you can do it at a massive scale where it's also accurate data as well, then that just, I mean, that's very, very impressive of how quickly a process like customs and cross-border trade and that tariffs can all play a large role, and it flips on a dime, and you have to have technology in order to help you process through all of that information. Otherwise, your business is going to suffer or possibly go out of business. So I think it's really cool that DHL actually has those tools. Here's one of my favorite quotes from the tour that was said by a DHL representative. He said, "The AI has left the screen, it's in the warehouse, on the trailer, and it's making real-time decisions." So good quote there about using AI that's actually useful. All right, number 4, kind of cheating on this one because I kind of already mentioned it before, but that is the customs process of all of the packages at the sorting facility, at the export facility, and how all of the different packages have to go through all of the same technology of scanning that the Customs and Border Patrol have at their disposal. And so all of, when you take your suitcase and you put it through, and it goes through all of the different security measures, that same thing, just slightly more sophisticated, was also at the export facility. And so all of the packages that were coming off were going right through that truck. And then there was one chute is for the good packages, and then the other chute is for the bad packages. So that was super interesting. Another interesting part is that they actually have canines there as well, that is managed by a third party to go through, sniff some of the packages, just in case there's a little bit of questionable material in there, that the canine is right on site. It's managed by a third party that can go up and inspect those different packages. I thought that that was really cool, that it's just, it's a DHL warehouse. You didn't expect to see a dog kind of sitting in one of the cages. Now, when we walked by, there was no dog in that cage at the moment, but then when we came back around at the end of the tour, there was a dog that was in the facility, and he was a little grumpy. Otherwise, I would have gotten a video. But I mean, if you're a dog working in a warehouse facility and you have to help with 10,000 packages an hour, I might be a little grumpy at the end of the day too. So no shade to that dog, but it still counts as a win in my book, because we still got to see the pup, and he was really cute. Blonde, white Labrador, I think. Yeah, it was definitely a lab, but I don't know what the actual phrase is. There's chocolate lab, but is it white chocolate lab? I'm not exactly sure. But it was a blonde lab. So whatever that phrase is, cute pup, but grumpy. Okay, number 5 on the list was also at the Innovation Center, and it was one of my, I think one of my more favorite ways to think about shipping, and that's how you handle shipping packages, especially e-com packages, in dense urban environments. And I guess you could call it a row. It's actually an e-bike. It's a small delivery vehicle that is electric, and it's much smaller, so it can kind of go through the streets. Think of like the streets of New York. When I took a long trip to New York a couple of years ago, And I noticed, and logistics people are always paying attention to this kind of stuff, but I always wondered how do they get stuff, big trucks and semi trucks? Like, are they regularly driving around the city? Sometimes, yes. I did see a bunch of flatbed trucks that had clearly some, building supplies like concrete pillars and things like that. So I did see a big truck like that, but the overwhelming majority of regular deliveries, you will see the e-bikes everywhere in a city like New York. But then you'll also see bigger trucks that will park off on the side of the road. Then they unload whatever packages into a smaller delivery truck. And then I saw that same delivery style truck that would be in another part of the city. And then they would be unloading into even a smaller vehicle. And then from there, it could go from not just a smaller vehicle, but then one of I don't it's like a pallet jack, kind of, not a pallet jack. It's a smaller cart that they're taking a lot of the packages and putting them on that cart. Now, to kind of skip a lot of those steps is an electric vehicle that was developed by Ryter. So it's R Rytle, I should say, not because Rytle kind of sounds like writer, but this is Rytle. So Rytle, and it's an urban delivery bike, and it was awesome. So it was really, really cute. I will have a video up on the screen because I definitely took a video of that. But it was I that kind of delivery innovation, I think, is fascinating to me because we talked earlier about being able to save the second and a half of being able to reach into your pocket to grab a barcode scanner. When why don't you save those couple seconds and use a pro glove and scan it like Iron Man instead? Where this is another innovation where you can have those facilities, those mini logistics hubs in a high density urban area where a big truck is going to take a lot longer for them to maneuver around that kind of traffic, all of those people, in order to sufficiently make deliveries. But there's also warehouse space is a little challenging to come by in big urban environments. And this is not just speaking from a New York perspective, but speaking of cities all over the world where it's these high density urban not villages, but urban environments, also where cars and trucks just can't go because they're frankly too big. And so you come up with a system like this, like the Rydal Urban Delivery Bike, and that can make the delivery process a lot more smoother, where you can hopefully save not just seconds, but minutes, maybe hours, in order to make the shipment process a lot more smoother. And when it comes to e-commerce, I've said it before, I'll say it again, the every little innovation matters. And so that was really cool to see. All right. And last on some of the really super cool things that I learned, but number 6 on this list is a lot of the real world innovation labs that are going on all the time within DHL. So we've talked a bunch about all of the minor little issues or minor things that DHL is optimizing and innovating on. But then at a bigger scale, they have what's called the Industry Trends Report. And so they track 40 global logistics trends with 139 use cases, and they track it all on their website. So they're very public with a lot of these different trends, and they will pop up, they will be removed, just based on what people are talking about, what people are investing in, and where they see the future kind of going. They release this report, I believe, every 2 years in order to help folks think about the future a little bit more, think about their planning a little bit more, because there were several different moments, and I'll get into it in just a second, with other different sort of sustainable materials and things like that that they had within the facility. But the Innovation Labs report I thought was really fascinating because it's not something that you have to go to the Innovation Center in order to read or in order to digest. You can actually go to the DHL website. It's called the Logistics Trend Radar, and it's 7.0, and it has basically a giant circle where they have social and business trends on one side, and then they have technology trends on the other side. And at the top, they have high impact, and at the bottom, that they have low impact. And so all of those different, I think it was, what did I say? It was 40 global logistics trends with 139 use cases. So those 40 logistics trends are all placed within that circle based on a variety of different metrics of who they're talking to as far as customer wise, investor wise, and partnership wise, and things like that. So that report, I would highly encourage you to go and check it out. I'll link to it in the show notes just to make it super easy. But it was really, really cool to see. A couple other really, really cool to see items before I get into the food part of my trip is it's called coconut husk packaging, and they use it as an alternative shipping material. Now when you pick this thing up, it looks like a soil type material. They had everybody kind of guess, what did you think it was? They said it was a tropical element, so everybody's kind of guessing, and I'm like, oh, it's palm tree bark, and they're like, no, close, but it's actually coconut husk. And so when you think about the amount of, or I guess kind of well, I'm in Florida, and so when you think about how many coconuts are actually consumed, they're consumed a lot. But maybe that's just because of where I live, and you can just kind of go around the block, and there's people like chopping coconuts in half, and you can have coconut milk on the regular. I don't particularly like a lot of coconut milk. It's just not my thing, but I think it's cool that that still happens, and that's super hydrating and all that good stuff. But that byproduct of the husk just goes to waste. And so it's really cool that they are looking at using that material as a sustainable packaging material. Being able to take something that's a waste product and turn it into something that's useful is always a win in my book. And so I will make sure that we put something up on the screen in order to display that, because it was really cool looking. I would have never guessed, but now that you see the color, you probably can see it a little bit more of how that product. I mean, it's the same exact color as the outside of a coconut. It's just made into different sustainable packaging materials, and DHL is testing using that. So I thought that was cool. They also had a section of the Innovation Center that was dedicated to sustainable shipping media. There was, especially when it came to the tour itself, there were several other media members there. Met a whole bunch of new people that I didn't know actually covered anything logistics, and it was cool to see their reaction. And there was even one journalist in particular, I think his name was Aaron, and he said something that stuck with me, because he was talking about, the Innovation Center was really cool, but then going to the warehouse and seeing it in action was where it really clicked for him, of the different processes that all take place within the shipment journey, and how these tiny little improvements can really make a huge impact on the entire process. So that was really cool to meet him. Also, shout out to my friend Mary over at Freight Waves. She's host of Check Call. Seen her a bunch. She used to work with her over during my time at Freight Waves. We actually ran into each other on the elevator on the first day of the tour. So we were all staying, all the journalists and the writers and podcasters and stuff were all staying in the same hotel. And as I was taking the elevator down to go meet everyone for the first time, she jumped on the elevator with me, and it was a complete shock. So it was a really, really cool moment to be in a different city and running into a colleague that you used to work with that you had no idea was going to be there. So shout out to Mary. It was really, really cool to see her. And then there was also just a bunch of like retail writers, not a bunch. There was, I think there was 7 of us there, and then a handful of DHL reps who we kind of hung out with the whole day. So it was cool to be around other media members and see what they thought was interesting as well. And so I'm sure that they will have a bunch of stories coming out. I know DC Velocity was there. Obviously, Freight Waves was there. Eugene from Robot Report was also there. And so if I come across any of their reporting from their tour as well, be sure to link it in the show notes in case you wanted to check their workout as well. But that was really, really cool. But now let's get into the fun stuff, and that is the food conversation when it comes to Chicago. Because one thing, I've never been to the city, and this was my first time visiting. Like I said, I didn't get to do much like touristy stuff, but food was a big thing on my wish list. So I wanted to try as much as I could. I was only there for 2 days, so I limited time to check out some of the stuff. But the first thing I did whenever I checked into my hotel is I asked the front desk lady, I said, where is the best deep dish dish pizza that I can get. And she said Giordano's. She gave me a menu, told me that they deliver, and I said, perfect. That's exactly what I'm going to be ordering for tonight's dinner. It was fantastic, so much so that I have since Giordano's. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. Chicago people, please don't come for me and come for my throat. Giordano's is the correct way to pronounce it, I believe. Again, don't kill me. But they also ship. And so coming from, the Chicago, probably the greatest shipping hub in the world. A lot of people call that Freight Alley, not necessarily Chattanooga. Sorry, Chattanooga. But there's kind of the competing freight alleys of Chattanooga versus Chicago. But I got some pizzas shipped from Giordano's directly down to Jacksonville, Florida. And so I was able to share that pizza experience with my husband, and he absolutely loved it. We still have 2 more pizzas to go. So we got the 3-pack. It was my husband's birthday recently. And so I didn't know what the hell to get him. And so I was like, let me just get him a bunch of food. So got him a bunch of food. And part of that package was some deep dish pizza from Giordano's. And so that was really cool. So if you're interested in it, maybe if you have a little inkling for some deep dish pizza, then I would highly recommend getting that pizza, but then also adding extra sauce. That was my only minor complaint about the frozen versus getting it in real life, I guess, or getting it fresher whenever I was in Chicago, is that I was able to tell them I want more sauce. Because I'm a sauce girl. I love pizza sauce. I often ask for extra pizza sauce. And so if you're like that, and if you're like me, then with the frozen pizzas that they ship to you, I would just advise just getting your own little pizza sauce. And then that way you can truly, truly enjoy it, I think, in the way that it's intended, or the way that you like. Whatever, pick your poison. So had that. And then they took us out to dinner to Carmine's. And so Carmine's is an Italian restaurant, in case for folks who don't know. Just in general, for folks who don't know, Chicago is widely regarded as one of the greatest food cities in the world, where you can find all different kinds of foods in a very short, not short distance, but yeah, kind of a short distance. And so I had some really great Chinese food when I first got in, because it's really tough to find good Chinese food in Jacksonville, Florida. I could find great Chinese food in New York and Vancouver, but I have yet to find any in Florida itself. And so it was awesome to get some really great Chinese food, get some deep dish pizza. We had dinner at Carmine's. I had some really great pasta, and then of course desserts like eclairs and cakes and things like that. But the real, I would say, winner that stole the show was the very next day, when I had to get up and go to the airport and be at the airport by 6 a.m. It was the first day that they were doing the new real IDs that you have to have for any kind of air travel. And so I was worried that, I'm going to be flying on this first day, that they're doing this new rule, and I'm going to miss my flight. I'm going to be stuck here. Like, I don't want to be stuck here. And, I have a fear of like being stuck in cities, which I guess probably most people do. Okay, so got to the airport super early. Security was a breeze. I already had my real ID, so I just went through free and clear. Perfect. I was good. Got through super quick. And I said, well, hell, like, since I'm here and I got, about an hour and a half to spare, I was like, let me see if any of these restaurants are serving hot dogs, or maybe there's a hot dog specific place within the airport. And sure enough, there was a hot dog specific restaurant within the O'Hare airport. And so I was able to have my first Chicago style hot dog. And I just want to say, I have been so wrong about how to eat a hot dog properly for my entire life. I'm 41, and I have staunchly defended the ketchup on a hot dog. But after having my first experience with Chicago style toppings, I take back everything I've ever said about needing ketchup on a hot dog. I could not have been more wrong, because the perfect blend of a Chicago dog is the onions, it's the relish, it's the mustard, the tomatoes, the pickles, the peppers. It's a combination that I have since started making at home. I had it last night, another Chicago dog, where we've bought hot dogs several times, and now it's the only way I can eat a hot dog. I went to a baseball game last weekend, and they didn't have any, obviously not in Chicago, but all they had was ketchup and mustard and relish. And eating the hot dog felt gross, felt disgusting. I now, probably for the rest of my life, will only have it the Chicago style way. And so that's been probably the biggest revelation of this trip. Chicago style dog superiority, and then also balancing the psychological aspect of humans working with robotics. Biggest two takeaways of the entire trip. And thank you to DHL for allowing me to experience all of this, not just the food, which I've raved about, but from the innovation center to the export facility. Really, really cool to see a lot of these things that you hear about, that you can see videos online about. But when you see it in person and you see the different things that they're tweaking in all areas of the shipment process, from the packaging to the scanning to the delivery vehicles, it really is incredibly impressive. I don't know, and in fact, I think one of the DHL reps confirmed to me, places like Amazon, FedEx, UPS, you can't just go tour their facilities like this. DHL has innovation centers all over the world. And so it was really cool to see that, maybe the innovations that might work in the Americas won't work, in the Middle East or in East Asia, or in Europe. We've talked about it on this show about even just the construction of a warehouse in the United States is much more horizontal. Whereas in Europe, because they don't have this room, they don't have the space, it's much more vertical. And so having these different processes and these different ways to test different innovations all across the globe, highly impressive. Really, really thankful that they invited me to come and do this tour. Really, really thankful that they allowed me the excuse to go to Chicago and be able to eat some of this food that I've heard my entire life and frankly changed my hot dog life. But this was really, really incredible to see. A lot of the things that I mentioned, I will link to them in the show notes, especially for a lot of the video portions, a lot of the B-roll that I took that really helps to kind of paint a picture of some of the things I was trying to explain, especially when it comes around to the air cargo, to be able to see the packages going into whatever that contraption is, and then taking that contraption and putting it inside of an airplane. Like, it just makes sense. And then now, whenever you see that process taking place in the real world, you will recognize all of the people and all of the different innovation tweaks, optimization tweaks that led to making that more of a reality and making it more quicker and cheaper and more efficient. And so thank you again to the DHL team for allowing me to kind of nerd out on some of this stuff. And thank you to you all for listening to me nerding out about food and robotics and innovation and shipping and e-commerce and all of that stuff. I love talking about this kind of stuff. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for enjoying the show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And we will have more content like this for you coming in the future. But until then, thank you so much for your time and attention, and go Jacks. Hello again. This is the future version of Blythe coming back in order to hopefully help set up the next couple conversations you are going to hear. These, I mentioned this earlier in this episode, talking about the presentations and the DHL speeches that were given during the innovation tour. And so because, our amazing podcast editor, Josh, was able to clean them up really well, now we have them available at the end of this conversation, which is not necessarily the end of it. It's actually the start of a couple more talks, but it's the end of the first part of the show. So if you would like to listen to what some of these DHL executives have to say, especially around industry trends, logistics trends, and some of the other questions that were asked during the process, then I will go ahead and let y'all listen to that now.
Welcome also from my side. I'm Klaus. I'm leading innovation and research globally for the group. That means my team is based on 4 innovation centers, and I have the pleasure to travel the world and visit the team. Very happy to be here with you today in Chicago. What I want to do is I want to broaden the perspective a little bit, so much focus on AI, and I want to share with you, as Emilia mentioned, how we are looking into the future with the DHL logistics for AI. But then I want to bring it back to AI and show what the data is telling us about AI, and also provide some examples, really fill some slots that we have not covered today, because AI is obviously a very important topic. So looking into the future and doing trend research is not an easy job to do. Some say forecasting is a risky business. However, you see here that there are tools out there that can help. Not all tools are perfect, but we truly believe that with logistics trend radar, we do have a tool that enables us and our customers to identify the right trends and to focus on the right trends within the next 10 years. So let me briefly explain to you the logic of the logistics trend radar. So we are looking at version 7.0 of the DHL logistics trend radar that we launched in September last year. We are looking at, as Amelia said, 40 trends that we have identified as most relevant for logistics. So clearly not only for us as DHL as a logistics service provider, but also for our customers in the logistics function. Very briefly on the concept of the radar, we have 3 dimensions that we are looking at. So on the left-hand side, so the type of trends on the left-hand side, we see social and business trends. On the right-hand side, we do see technology trends. And we believe that both categories are equally important. Although what we do see, there's a natural focus towards the right-hand side of the trends. Those techie, those maybe more tangible topics. But by no means we should ignore the left-hand side, which is typically much more impactful and much more strategic for our customers. So that's the first dimension. The second dimension, we are looking at the impact of these trends on logistics and the logistics function. As a general rule, the higher a trend moves towards the top middle pieces here, the more impact this trend will have. And then last but not least, we're looking at a time frame of 10 years. So this red dot in the middle basically is the moment when a trend is not a trend anymore, but becomes common business practice. And as a consequence, you do see within that inner circle the trends that we see materializing in the next 5 years, and in this outer circle, those trends that we see materializing in the next 6 to 10 years. So with these 3 dimensions, what's important also to recognize is it does not give you an indication on what to focus now and on what to focus in the future. Right? There are some trends that we do see materializing only in the 9 years, but our customers, and we urge our customers to look at these already today. So this is the idea. You also see on the right-hand side that between version 6 and version 7 we have removed some trends from the radar. And there are different reasons why we remove a trend, and the most common reason for removing the trend is that the trends are not trend anymore. Common business practice. So you see, for example, cloud and APIs, that is just everywhere. Or print commerce, which is just everywhere, and actually also in the whole industry. And there are other trends that we have removed because we've seen no significant development in the trends, or at least not the development that we anticipated. And tube systems is a good example. So it's about moving cargo underground. You might have seen Hyperloop, it's just one example. But 3 years ago, when we developed the last version of it, it was a big topic. Big investments actually promised to go into that. But we've seen it as not produced no significant development, and that's why we And also, and those are marked here in this latest version, we see some newcomers, some new trends coming to the radar. So typically, what happens with new trends is not so much that there's this brand new, extraordinary topic that nobody has ever seen before, but it's rather that we see significant development within a topic that was one trend before, or as one of my team members once put it, we see trends exploding. So a couple of years ago, the trend of robotics exploded. It was just robotics, now it's indoor and outdoor. And for this version, we saw an explosion when it came to AI. So AI has been on the trend radar for a couple of versions already, but yeah, I think you will all agree that we see a significant development. That's why you see audio AI and others, a significant addition in terms of number of trends of AI. And the other part of the mentioned there is sustainability. Same here. Already since the very first version of the trend radar 2013, sustainable logistics was on the radar. But now we see this developing in so many different directions with sustainable aviation fuels, with electrification. So we felt we have to be more detailed here. I want to invite you to have a look at the radar. It's publicly available on our website. There's a reason for that. We do believe in a very open innovation approach. That's why we're very open to sharing all our research and all the learnings we get from all these engagements with the innovation centers. This is a proven approach. It's to our benefit. And what we hear is also the benefit of our customers, these universities using the trend radar. And there's a lot to explore. So 40 trends, very detailed description for each and every trend. On that website, you'll find 139 use cases for all these trends that we have identified from already there today and initially in the future. So please have a look. It's not meant to be a book that you can read. You can download a PDF that's 200 pages. You can do that. I had to do it, but you shouldn't actually. Again, I want to emphasize the fact that this is a tool. This is a tool we want our customers, our stakeholders to use to come back whenever they are interested in a certain topic or they want to see a certain topic. Emilia already mentioned sustainability and AI, the two top topics. One thing I want to add to that is some topics like we discussed today as well, robotics and automation. They moved a little bit into background of things with sustainability and I being so probably, but for logistics this is still one of the top topics. Same holds true for IoT as well. So today we want to talk about, we talked a lot about AI already, and as I said, I want to show what we do see, what people can radar, and maybe give a certain structure to that trend of AI. The one thing that we found, and maybe you heard this every now and then in the explanations today already, there's so much more to AI than just Gen AI and just generative AI, just ChatGPT. It is big, it's also big for logistics, like for other industries, but it's one part. The other part is the AI analytics that is like lifting big data to the next level. And you've seen and heard examples like this as well. The third part I want to emphasize is on the left-hand side. What AI does for us in logistics is it helps us to acquire data. So data we did not have before that we then can use for Gen AI applications, for AI analytics applications. So generating the right data is a core element for us, and there are different ways of doing it. So when you look at the definition of AI, the definition of AI is basically it's an intelligent computer system that is mimicking human beings. When you use that definition, that logic with these certain areas, then what I try to do here is showing the different elements of AI and how they fit to us as human beings. So AI analytics, the next level of big data analytics, our brain, us processing data, drawing conclusions. Computer vision, you heard that term today already as well. Our eyes, screening the environment and acquiring data from what we see. Audio AI, our ears, listening to the environment. You have one example already, listening to the environment, again, acquiring data that then can be used, data that we have not had before. But obviously, Gen AI, Matt was talking about this in many different aspects. And last but not least, also a trend on the radar, AI ethics. So we do see that trend, we see that need for an ethical use of AI. Security, cybersecurity is one aspect. In that, AI systems, bias, for example, is another one. AI regulations coming up in all parts of the world and so on and so forth. So a left-hand side trend, a social and business trend, that I think should not be forgotten. To give you a glimpse of maybe cases that we have not seen so far within these 5 areas I just brought 3. One is on AI analytics. And you see here, this is a DHL supply chain solution for inventory optimization. Obviously, it's a data-driven assessment of inventory for our customers, which is data analytics. AI comes into play when we lift this to the next level of analytics, and when we have systems, AI-enabled systems that give recommendations for our colleagues, for decision making. the next level. And obviously, this helps us with efficiency, with visibility, even with resilience, us and our customers. Second, computer vision. And Esther is going to talk about one more example. This is an example, a project we did for load fill assessment of trucks using a picture of a normal mobile phone to assess the fill rate of a truck. The data differs a little bit, but something between 40 and 50% of all trucks run idle or half full. There's a huge efficiency gain possible. This is one way of using computer vision, again, acquiring data from pictures. Another way of doing this project we did in Singapore is for inventory counting in certain situations, but generally computer vision using either live footage or pictures to acquire data. And last but not least, maybe the most exotic part for some audio AI. This is a project we did with a startup called Tinman. This is a box that not only has ears but also, so it's using microphones and sensors. You put that box on one conveyor belt, and what the box does is it's screening the environment. It's listening to that conveyor belt. And another part for where AI is really powerful is AI is great in identifying anomalies. So AI might not be able to tell you what's wrong, but AI might be able to tell you that there's something wrong, there's something different compared to the normal environment. And this is exactly what the Tinman box does. So it runs on the conveyor belt, it identifies sounds or vibrations that are not normal, and of course this gives us the opportunity for predictive maintenance to reduce downtime and increase the efficiency of these assets. That's very briefly 3 examples. My last point that I feel is also really important. When we talk about all these technologies, I guess we're all hyped to a certain technologies. We did a study on the future of work in logistics. And I want to use the results of that study as a reminder that logistics is a people business and it's going to stay a people business. That's for sure. So we're talking about services being provided to our customers and ultimately which being delivered by people. And if you bring those two elements together, logistics being a people business and all these technologies that we're looking at, it's really important to take these colleagues along when we implement these new technologies, these new solutions. What you do see here as a finding, just the top row. So looking back, actually the experience of the people we surveyed, 8,000 people we surveyed, is very positive. So 90% see technology being helpful looking back. Looking into the future, there's a certain fear, more than 50%, it doesn't matter office or operations, believe that all these technological advancements are or could be threats to their jobs. And this is something we have to implement. Not only when we go for the full-fledged global implementations of a new technology, we already recognize this when we do this pilot project that Mario was mentioning, these samples we're doing. So pretty much every technology pilot or proof of concept project very soon turns into a change management project in Agile. I want to make that point because technology is all over the place today or this afternoon for all of you. But we feel this is equally important, especially for people business like logistics. In closing, I want to quote Professor Richard Wilding. Some refer to him as the supply chain guru. You might follow him on LinkedIn. Nodding here. So what Richard is saying is that the competition is not so much about competing with companies anymore, but it's about competing supply chains. I think a very visionary statement he already made a couple of years ago. With the resilience topic coming up with the pandemic that we just overcame. I think we all recognize the importance of the supply chains, and this is where we want to contribute with our foresight and with the projects we do. To help our customers competing on their projects. I close here. We can do questions later on. I hand it over to Ernesto, and Ernesto is going to explain how we take all this foresight and then go on a mission and bring this to the ground into innovation projects.
Thank you, Klaus. Everyone, my name is Ernesto Camacho. I'm the Senior Innovation Manager on Klaus's team. Responsible for helping lead the Americas team for innovation and trend research. So identifying these trends, prevailing advancements that we see out there, and then working with emerging partners, with established corporations, to try to bring that innovation in-house. So today, I'll be talking to you about this open innovation process that Klaus alluded to, how we work with our partners. At the Innovation Center, we talk a lot about innovation partnership, at least within our innovation team. We don't focus on R&D or M&A, but rather partnerships and working with these companies and working with them and conducting pilot projects to assess their technology, assess feasibility, viability. And so today, I want to talk to you a little bit about that process as well. But before we get there, one thing I want to talk about is just the importance of having the logistics trend radar and what that means for myself and for our team here. So this report goes back to over a decade, or the tool that Klaus alluded to. So every 2 years, we do update the logistics trend radar. Klaus mentioned, what has changed from the last edition in 2022 to 2024. I just wanted to give you more of a timeline to showcase how, the fact that we've been thinking about innovation for at least a decade in association with these trends. And with that, another offering that our team provides, again, open to the public, are these trend reports. So very deep dive publications into specific topics that are on the logistics trend radar. Our most recent one is the Supply Chain Diversification Trend Report. So if you want to understand more about nearshoring, omnishoring, what does this actually mean for logistics, for supply chains? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges within that? That's also available as well. And for our team, I think it's just so important to have something like the logistics trend radar because it provides a common language. Before coming into this role, I would see a robotic solution and say, that's just a bot, right? But now, with having the logistics trend radar, with having common terms, common language, now I can actually talk to providers and say, let's talk about your autonomous mobile robotic solution that has a picking use case. So you can be very specific and save a lot of time, be more efficient in these conversations, and be able to curate that a little bit more appropriately as well. Behind me, we have our innovation funnel. It's how we approach innovation here at DHL. It's our process within our innovation and trend research team. On the left-hand side, Klaus talked about thought leadership. So what you see in the red ring there is our logistics trend radar. It's our North Star. It's the way we communicate and the way we're able to structure these conversations that I talked about in relation to these pilot projects. The second piece, the yellow ring, is where we are today. So those are our innovation centers. These are the exhibits and the customer engagement. So that's where we're sitting at today. And the conversation that I'm covering now is this third ring here, the proof of concept and the pilot projects. Proof of concept essentially is just proving the concept. Does it actually work? And the pilot project, I like to think about it as a fit. Is it fit for use? Does the proof of concept make sense? Does it work? Yes. And if so, does it work for this particular use case or this specific situation? So just wanted to provide that terminology. And within that, like every funnel, where we hope to get at is the productizing and scaling, essentially ensuring that anyone within DHL can adopt these technologies, bring them in-house, and be able to scale that across the enterprise here. So within that, a lot of the work that we do within my team centers on these innovation projects, we've heard that quite a bit throughout today about the importance of doing these small-scale tests. And for me, having these tests are so paramount because when we work with with startups, essentially it allows us to test a lot of solutions in real time, allows us to mitigate risks, allows us to understand whether there is feasibility, does it actually work, and viability, is it successful for what it's supposed to do there. So for us, innovation projects are time-bound initiatives, again, designed to test the solution in a real-world environment. And I just want to remember that for us, what's pretty great, it's not just theoretical. Emilia also talked about staying close to customers, staying close to operations, staying close to technology. So I'm very fortunate to be able to go out into these warehouses, talk to frontline operational leaders about their challenges, their pain points, actually understand what's happening on the ground. And so within that, it's really great to actually be able to deploy these tests in a real-world environment where there's high stakes, but there could also be high benefit and high reward for able to adopt and gain some efficiencies through implementing that. So behind me, these are our ingredients, essentially what we need to have a successful project. So as Klaus alluded to, it's all about people. And behind me, we have that. We have, essentially, we work with the visionary customer. So this could either be a business unit or a direct DHL customer that is willing to take on and want to endeavor with an innovation project. The second piece is a DHL operational site here that's ready to test and learn. So as I mentioned, our team does travel across the Americas, and we try to find those sites that have capacity, are interested in adopting this innovation, and within that we work closely with them to achieve that. We also work with our solution providers, so we need them to be able to bring that solution to us. Sometimes that could look like software providers who are looking to work with us to update our technology, or it could also be hardware, or it could be a combination of both as well. And Mario also showcased some of those different technologies today on the floor. And last but not least is one of our team members. So I do have a counterpart in Singapore, in Germany, and in Dubai. And essentially, our team members also do this work globally. So what's pretty great is if we identify something that works really well, we can scale that across our different regions. And at the end of my presentation, actually we'll be showing you a solution provider that we're very proud of, a computer vision AI company that actually went through our process and went through our entire funnel, and now we're very fortunate to be able to scale that across the enterprise. So here I just want to provide a quick diagram, a process that outlines how we actually work through innovation. What are the actual steps? Ernesto, what actually happens, when you find a provider, what does that look like actually in practice? So behind me, I provided 4 examples. Klaus alluded to the loading and transit inefficiencies. He talked about using computer vision to load that, so I put that up there as an example. We also have unsafe lifting practices, a lot of priorities to take care of our people when they're bending down and doing a lot of that heavy lifting. So that's another need that I put out there. Capturing dimensions of non-conveyable items, we talked about that earlier when we were using the mobile dimensioner, and then tracking high-value shipments through our IoT. So these are 4 examples of different solutions that we have brought into the DHL ecosystem and that we tackled. So where all this starts with this process, it starts at discovery. It's truly understanding what is the problem, what is the pain point that is happening. So once we have a site, once we have a stakeholder, we go out and try to identify and talk to a lot of the on-the-ground leaders to try to understand, how much information can we gather, what are the challenges that you're having on the ground, and within that, we're able to do customer interviews, we're able to sit down with them, we're able to do Gemba walks, to walk through the warehouse, try to document as much as we can. And so a lot of that we call the discovery piece. And so within this particular stage, we also take the time to ask our stakeholders, what's important to you? What does success look like? What would it look like to bring in a solution provider? What's your future state? And this is really bridging the gap between where we are now and where we want to be. And so once we complete that piece, we go into the solution identification mode. So now this is a really fun part for me. So it's the scouting. We do the desktop research. We go out to conferences. We go out with our partners within our innovation ecosystem, some accelerators, some VC companies, to try to understand what's out there. What are the solution providers that are addressing these issues related to computer vision, related to sustainability, related to packaging? And what we do is we invite them in to engage with us. We actually have a really great landing page called the Warehouse of Innovation, where startups or established corporations can actually directly partner with us by filling out an intake form, and that directly goes to our team. And so we look through that and essentially make an assessment and invite those companies to come talk to us about their solution, talk to us about their strategic roadmap. Why are they specifically focused on logistics? What is their regional capability? How soon can they scale these solutions? So we have a lot of conversations with the startups in order to assess their readiness. And so within that, once we identify the problem, once we have the solution, we conduct the fit assessment with our stakeholders. Now that we have a solution, does it in fact meet the problem? So this is the problem-solution fit that we try to look for to assess whether the solution identifies the needs, the goals, and the capabilities of what our partners are looking to do. And also, within this, we do a lot of collaboration work again with our stakeholders and truly try to understand, is there a business case for this? Is there a return on investment? It might be nice to solve that need, but we also need to make sure that we are looking at budgets, looking at timelines, ensuring that this is the right time and place for us to implement this solution. So these are some of the things that we look at as well. Next is one of my favorite parts. So this is the pilot testing. This is the part where we're able to go out into the warehouse, out into the dock, out into the facility, and conduct this test. So this is normally, it takes a couple of weeks to go out on site. We invite the solution provider to come into the warehouse, and we conduct a test. We develop KPIs to try to understand, what is our baseline, what are we testing for, and at the end of those couple of weeks, we gather that user feedback, understand whether the pilot and whether the solution actually resolved the problem it was meant to solve, and that really culminates in our recommendation. So this is a report. It could be a report. It could be just a final closeout meeting where we gather all these insights together, package it up very nicely, and make that recommendation go or no go, just based off how the on the outcome and the evaluation of that solution is. And so these are, again, the 5-stage process that we walk through with the companies that we partner with. And next, I'd like to show you a video of a company that actually has gone through these different 5 stages. And I'll go ahead and let that play before we jump into our Q&A.
At DHL, safety is a top priority. Logistics is a people business, and we keep our employees' well-being at the forefront of what we do. This includes leveraging our existing ecosystem of innovative startups to further improve employee safety. With this goal in mind, DHL first partnered with Protex AI on a proof of concept in Denmark to test Protex AI solutions' ability to enhance employee safety.
Following its success in Denmark, DHL is now running a second pilot at both East Midlands and Heathrow Airport.
Protex AI is a computer vision company founded with the mission to revolutionize how safety teams make proactive decisions that lead to a safer workplace. Our technology integrates with your existing CCTV systems, providing 24/7 visibility into unsafe events and behavioral trends that allow you to identify risks before serious accidents occur. Once safety rules are in place, Protex AI will autonomously identify risky events such as near misses involving workers too close to forklifts, or even climbing over conveyor belts.
The new pilot is 4 times larger than the Denmark operation, integrating 40 cameras across the 2 sites.
The expanded pilot aims to firstly test the solution's newest capabilities, and secondly to assess its scalability for potential global deployment across DHL's operations worldwide. Recently, our product team has launched exciting new features, including our Gen AI tool, Copilot. Copilot empowers teams to quickly obtain specific data insights in the format they need, all within seconds. During the initial proof of concept in Denmark, the solution was capable of blurring people's faces. However, upon recognizing the business needs of DHL, Protex further developed the de-identification feature, avoiding the specifics of individual identities to maintain worker autonomy and trust. The system can adapt from unblurred facial and body recognition to complete anonymization, aligning with our privacy needs. Leveraging AI to enhance best work practices is part of a wider trend called computer vision. Computer vision has been identified as a high-impact technology for logistics by us on the Trend Research team. With a growing number of applications tailored for the logistics industry, this trend is becoming increasingly influential in shaping the future of work. DHL embraces cutting-edge technologies while keeping people at the heart of logistics. By partnering with innovative startups like Protex AI and fostering close collaboration, this is key to delivering excellence in innovation. It allows us to acquire learnings from real-world deployments, collaboratively develop features, and scale solutions across our global network. We welcome startups to reach out and explore how we can work together to shape the future of logistics.
2 things that stand out. One of them is collaborative development of features. So what Emily pointed out is also being able to learn and provide feedback to some of our technology providers, essentially helping them redefine their offerings, their solution, and ensuring that they can achieve that product market fit, if you will, by working with DHL. Also, what was great about this is that Emily was able to take this from Denmark to London and then now globally, and being able to showcase the solution. So this is a really great example of just one of the solution providers that's been able to scale and has been able to grow through some of the partnerships as well. And so with that, I want to thank you for your time. We're going to move directly into the Q&A, and we can go ahead and get started. So I invite Klaus and Julia to come up.
Yes, so Klaus, Ernesto, and I are here for the Q&A portion. And yeah, happy to answer any questions that you might have surrounding the Innovation Center and what we've spoken about today.
Go ahead. I was going to say, when it comes to the trend radar, how do you guys begin to try to find out what's going to be on it, what's going to be in it? Is it something as simple as you just kind of survey your customers, or is it, I'm feeling it's a lot more complex than that? What is kind of that process to identify what those trends are, and if something should still stay on the radar?
It's a great question. We get that quite often. It is first of all, it's based on what we learn and hear from our ecosystem. Yeah, you saw the 14,000 visitors coming in. That's big companies as well. We learn from these engagements. And it's what we learn from startups and solution providers. Because of these 2 years, and now on top our research as well. And then the first step is bringing this all together. The good news is, and the good part is that, of course, we're starting now with one radar, with one current version, transforming this radar. What we then do is we double check what we learned and how we do things with our stakeholders. To give you a number, for this version of the radar, we align with 250 plus stakeholders. That's internal experts, but obviously we have the robotics experts in-house, right? So we align with them. That's academia, that's to a certain degree also customers. So it comes down to managing that ecosystem and getting out that knowledge, and not so much surveying it or letting this be generated by data or by a system. So it's much more experience-based than database, which I think is a strength. There are other solutions out there that are database, which is absolutely fine. We are, I think, very successful with a more experienced network-based approach.
I think I had a question here first. Yes.
The question was in regards to the sound AI and being used in the warehousing and whatnot. So the way that works with it, once it's fully operational correctly, you send it down and it would then hear all the sounds and you log that and then it would compare, or how exactly does that work?
Yes, 100% spot on. Depending on the operation, you would send that box through the conveyor belt every week or every month, depending, and it does exactly this. From a normal state, there's the sound, and there's the vibrations that are normal, and then you recognize the abnormal sounds or vibrations, and that's then the indicator that something is wrong. Right? Again, it comes down to the point that this AI system is not recommending what to do, but identifying that something is weird. Right? We see medical applications that work exactly like this. AI scanning a CT picture and data, right? Not knowing what it is, but identifying that something is different.
How do you decide what to implement as far as the trend is concerned, country to country? And is there a certain trend that works in one area of the world but doesn't necessarily work in another part of the world?
Take it. That's 2 parts. One is how to decide. And it comes down to the business case, and it comes down to the user of the technology. Right? You might be leveraging that technology, but there needs to be someone out there using the technology. So user acceptance and obviously a business case. It is really like this that we have to showcase to our colleagues on site that this solution makes sense. So that's one. your question on the application across the world, yes, of course, also comes down to the business case. I would argue that the trends you see, for the most part, they're relevant in all parts of the world. However, the impact differs across countries, and I think the most prominent example is automation and robotics. Of course, in high-cost countries and regions of this world, the impact of such a robot is so much bigger, or the impact of an efficiency gain is so much bigger than in other parts of the world. Yeah. So we tried, we did it to a certain degree also to regionalize the radar, but we recognize that it's probably the wrong level of doing it. So we rather, as Emily mentioned, rather than go down to the customer level and develop a customer trend radar very specific to that customer and stick with the global radar.
Talk a lot about the importance of partners and partnerships. I'm sure everyone wants to be a partner with DHL. So how do you what's your rate of turning people away, or what do you do when a company, you're getting 5 pitches for an AMR or an ASRS? How do you let some of them down easy? I mean, what's your rate of rejection?
You want to take it? It's a good question.
I can start, and then perhaps you can chime in for the last piece there. I would say that a lot of the partnerships that are successful are those that have a specific need. So we talked a little bit about if there are specific pain points within an operation, that makes us, it'll make it easier to then provide our stakeholders 5 or 6 solutions and be able to benchmark them and say, hey, let's try to test these 6 that are out there. And I think to your point about established players, specifically with like AMRs, I would say that we're fortunate that there's also a lot of innovators within the DHL ecosystem. There's different centers of excellence. There's things that are just focused on robotics, on automation, and the like. And what I would say is that we're fortunate enough that these are the teams that are out there specifically testing the use cases, talking about what's the likelihood, what are the risks associated with the financing around some of these solutions. And so within that, all that to say is that we work very closely with these internal business units that are already doing a lot of that due diligence, essentially on behalf of the organization to assess risk specifically. And also on the second piece about failure, I don't have a specific number in mind, but wanted to see also if there was any other piece on that in terms of what works, what doesn't work. I would say, at least for pilots that are not successful, one of the benefits that we have is that we have a lot of resilient partners that are able to go back to the drawing board, amend their solution, tweak it a little bit, identify areas to either be compliant or find ways that it can just meet the specifications and the needs of that operation. And so we found that, again, co-developing solutions, providing that feedback is something that our partners want to stick with us for the long term, exactly to your point of wanting to have that DHL partnership. So it is a lot of ebb and flow, there's a lot of learnings, and as we mentioned, even behind us, sometimes it takes more than one pilot to be able to assess how successful something like that is.
Just if I may, one addition, it's a great question. It's also the point that, I think that pilots are always successful. Even if we figure that this solution did not fit that specific use case, it is a great learning for us. And yes, it could have been the wrong solution, it could have been the wrong use case we were looking at. Sometimes it is also a little too early for a certain solution, and then we have the opportunity to co-develop. So I think this is an investment of DHL into the future, that we really have the freedom to do exactly this, right? So to do this pilot and to learn from our pilots, even if it looks not successful, but to learn from it and then maybe benefit from that learning later on in the process.
We're going to go with you, and then we're going to go back.
How long does it typically take to go through the entire process from start to finish, from identifying pain points to actually deploying that commercialize?
Hard to tell, very hard to tell. I would say something between 6 and 18 months. But it heavily depends. We have a repository of use cases and problems that we maintain and use. As a general rule, I would argue longer than you think really interesting and that was in detail, about 6 to 18 months.
Yeah, well, I mean, one other piece you made me think about is it also depends on the technology. So we've seen smart solutions, IoT sensors that perhaps don't require infrastructure, don't need to be connected even to a Wi-Fi because they have maybe like NFC readers or even just like general Bluetooth. So something like that, that's a small scale operation. There's no heavy investment requirements. You know, we could get that done in a month or two. But if it's a robotic solution, then it requires you to shut down an entire conveyor belt, a line, to be able to be compliant with some of the IT regulation. You know, then you're looking at those, 6 months to 18 months. So I would say also depending on what specific technology we're looking to implement. Also, Mario showcased the keyboard of like you could just have a mobile dimensioner within a matter of a week or two by just using that solution and introducing that. So again, it really depends on the complexity of the solution that we're trying to introduce, and then also on the infrastructure requirements for some of that.
Yeah, question for innovation centers globally, are there any plans to expand maybe into Africa or South America? I'm just curious if that's on the radar.
That's a very good question. And I'm going to start off and then I'm going to hand it over to Paz because I think he's better at answering this question. But we are the Americas Innovation Center, so we do tours, workshops in Spanish as well. We're trying to see if in the future we can get the Portuguese-speaking person here as well, so we can tend to all of the Americas. I don't think expanding or opening an innovation center in South America as of yet, but still become, the Americas Innovation Center and keep bringing in more Spanish speakers and Portuguese speakers, so we can tend to all of the Americas.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that we are heavily investing in the current innovation center. It was mentioned building a brand new center in Germany. Twice the size of the current one, which is a big investment for the company, and he was also talking about device and the same logic. And last but not least, also the innovation is an innovation that moves, so us bringing innovation into the countries. Actually, you see the value of doing exactly this across the regions. I think we're very well set up with covering all the regions in these 4 centers, but at the same time, we're taking care of these individual countries that go together.
So based on what you guys were saying, it sort of sounds like you act as an ad hoc innovation arm for companies that maybe don't have that capability super robust internally, just because not all companies do have that. But how do you expect your role to change with those clients when you think about the backdrop of like macroeconomic environment in the United States, tariffs? Like, do you anticipate that your clients' needs and challenges and interests will be changing on the technology front as they continue to navigate that, or that it will continue to be things that are warehouse focused, upgrading legacy systems, like that kind of thing?
I do see a continuation of it when you look at these big strategic topics of our customers, right? We're talking about sustainability, efficiency, of course, is always a topic. Resilience, you're referring to, is another one. They're not changing. And then, it's very individual company to company, and how far they're going to partner with us or not. I think it's not dependent on the environment. So I do not see this changing. Hopefully, our customers are seeing the benefits of this collaboration and also of the innovation and foresight jobs we're doing, which will benefit from that. And other advances that we see in continuation.
And I have room for one more question, and I saw you raise your hand before.
Similar to piggyback off that question, there's some with the greater public of fear or hesitation around AI and robotics. At the warehouse employee level, how do you handle maybe adoption or maybe the hesitation of adoption?
I can start off and then I'll hand it over to you, but since we do have a lot of virtual content as well that we show our customers, we actually have a video with the stretch robotic arm that Mario was showing you, I'm pretty sure, during the tour. I heard you talking about it, the stretch robotic arm, and it was a lady that started utilizing it in her operations, and she actually says in the video that it's the best coworker that she's ever had. So it's you can see it both ways. A lot of people are seeing it as a threat. Some people that are actually utilizing it in their everyday start to see it as something that they can actually leverage and they can utilize in their favor. So adoption might be a little, rough at the beginning, but after people see how it helps them in their daily operations, we get a lot of really good employee engagement.
As in all change management or change processes, communication is key. Playing that very openly and letting people also experience what it means. When we talk robotics, we're talking collaborative robotics, getting a co-worker, getting through that co-worker. I know there's some examples where even that robot as a co-worker got a name, a small token. But it's this open communication and the experience pilots have there as well that help with the adoption. And once you feel and see that benefit, whatever it is, right, making your work easier, safer, healthier, whatever it is, right, once you see the benefit, then you have overcome already that hurdle.
Just one comment that when organizational change, philosophical quote that I love is people will only support what they help create. And what's unique about these pilot projects is you have an opportunity to gather that on the ground feedback, help employees become part of that process, understand what's working, what's not, how we can tweak that. And that also helps so we don't double down and essentially deploy something that might have a high risk of failure because we didn't take into account the employees, the sentiment, how people feel about it. And so all that to say is, I'm a huge advocate of the pilot project because it allows us to look and be able to tweak that in a safe environment, if you will, before we scale and implement that. And then those are typically the points where you see those hesitations and that's like, I never heard about this, right? But having those pilots and being on the ground also allows us to truly understand, what's the sentiment, what can we do to better enable this? And also just to add that there are also in fact, some rural areas where there are workforce shortages. So I know there's also a lot of talk about replacing people, but there's other parts, specifically in the U.S., rural parts where we don't even have enough workers to show up at warehouses too, right? So there's also just all that to say that there is a spectrum as well of different narratives for what we can do when we think about employees, when we think about seasonality changes, peak demand areas as well, where we need to scale up the operations. And so all that to say is, when we think about and work with our employees, that's typically when we see more of that buy-in and that lasting opportunity of success.